We are finally ready to add a removing state to our grid placement project so that we can remove objects from our grid. Okay, let's get going. In the last video, we have created this IBuildingState and implemented the state pattern into our project so that it is easier for us to add the removing state. Let's right-click in the scripts folder, create a new C# script. I'm going to call mine removing state. And let's open this script up. Great. Now, our removing state will be very similar to our placement state. We are going to have the same fields, so it would be wise to consider creating a separate class that will store all the references or create an abstract class. For now, all we want to do is go to our placement state script and copy all the fields from the top of this class. Ctrl+C, go to the removing state, and for now let's paste the same fields to our removing state. Now we are going to not have the selected object index, but instead we are going to have a GameObject index, since this will be the reference to the object index from our list in our object placer, so that we can remove this object, but the rest of the fields will be basically the same. Well, actually we do not need to have the ID, because we are not going to get the data from our database, so we can also remove the database. Okay, that looks good. So what we are going to do is right-click on the name of the class, quick actions, and we are going to select generate constructor. We are going to uncheck the GameObject index, since this will be the private property. The rest of those we will add to our constructor. I'm going to right-click, quick action, and wrap every parameter, align wrapped parameters. Great. Now here, in our constructor, we are going to have one call. We have our previous system, so I'm going to call previous system dot start showing preview. And we are going to add remove preview to it. Okay, so this will be a new method. So let's right-click on this, quick action, and let's generate this method inside our preview system. Let's right-click and go to the definition of this method, and let's implement it right away. So in our previous system, at the top we had this start showing placement preview, where we had prepared the cursor. So we are going to copy this call, and we are going to paste it here as well. We are going to assume that we are going to have cursor of size vector2.1, or this is vector2 int.1. So we are going to only see one cell, and it will turn red or white. Okay, so another thing that we need to do is slide up. For some reason I can see that the color is ambiguous, so I probably have some references to the unused libraries at the top. I'm going to remove those, and system.drawing as well, because the color is from the Unity library, so this should be now good. Now we have apply feedback method, and we are going to basically reuse this, but since we are using the cell indicators, our cursor, as well as the changing the material of the preview, and we do not have any preview in our removing state, we need to split this code. So what we are going to do is we are going to rename maybe this, so right click and rename, and we are going to go apply feedback to preview. Okay, and we are going to copy this code, and we are going to paste it below, and we are going to call this apply feedback to cursor, or to cell indicator. Maybe let's call it cursor. Okay, and here at the top we are going to remove the cell indicator material call, and at the bottom we are going to remove the preview material call. Okay, so all we need to do is slide where we have used this, and this was in the update position. We are going to simply call apply feedback, and we are going to apply feedback to the cursor. And I think that's where we have called this method, and we can reuse this inside our start showing remove preview. Let's apply feedback to cursor, and we are going to pass false by default. So by default, I'm going to assume that we are selecting the incorrect position where there is no object to be removed. Now for this to work, we are also going to use the update position method. So we have this move preview and apply feedback to preview. So let's go to the update position method, and let's cut the apply feedback to preview, and let's paste it just below the move preview, because basically what we need to do now is we are going to check if preview object is not equal to null. We are going to only then call those two methods. But we know that the cursor is never null, so we can always apply update to the cursor. And just to finish this code, we can go to our stop showing preview and again check if our preview object is not null. We are going to only then call the destroy method on it, just for safety, because I don't think it will throw an exception, but it is better to check it and only call it if this is not null. Great! So I'm pretty positive that we have modified every bit of code here to account for our removing state inside our previous system. Let's save this and let's go back to our removing state. Great, so now at the top we are going to not inherit from mono behavior but from our IBuildingState. And if we type this, we are going to see this red squiggly line. We need to right click on this, name quick actions, and we can implement interface, which will add all the methods that will throw an exception to our new script. Great. So in the end state method, so when we stop being inside the removing state, we are going to simply call preview system.stop showing preview, and this will handle hiding the cursor. Okay. So on action is what is called when we click our mouse button. What we need to do here is we will need to get a grid data, since we do not know if the object is in the floor data or furniture data or if it is null. So we're going to call it selected data and we are going to set it to be null. And obviously we are going to check if our furniture data can place object at, and we are going to pass the grid position, and we need to pass the object size. Now obviously for the removing we only need to pass the vector to int.1. Since we want to select this specific cell, we are not interested in how big the object is. If it is on this specific cell, then we can remove it. So we are going to check if this is false. So we are checking if we can't place object here. This means that there is something in this space. So we are going to set the selected data equals a furniture data. And we are going to add else if, and we of course need to check if the floor data, now we are going to copy the same line here, contains this, or we can place object on in our floor data. Now we need to check this because this selected data can be null if there is no data containing this position. So we're going to set it to be floor data. So in case we haven't found it, we are going to check if our selected data is equal to null. We can return early because there is no data. Else we are going to pass the logic for removing the object from our grid. Now here I would add some sound playing so that we can inform the player that there is nothing to remove here. But we are going to try implementing the sounds at the end of this video. But I want to leave it in case I will just publish the code for how to add sound here and you can copy it from GitHub. So what we can do is we can ensure that our GameObject index is always -1, and it will be because we have initialized it like this. So else we are going to set the GameObject index equals, and we are going to call selected data or grid data if you want to rename it, get representation index, and we are going to pass here the grid position. Now we do not have this method, so we need to create it. Let's right click on it, quick actions, and generate this method. Let's right click on this and go to the definition. Now, as you might recall, we had implemented this dictionary which contains a vector3 int as a key and the placement data as a value, and the placement data had the ID and the placed object index. So that's what we are trying to get. So we are going to check if our placed objects contains equals false. So if we do not contain this object in our dictionary, we are going to return -1. Else we are going to return placed objects. We are going to get the grid position and we want to access the placed object index and return that. So we are going to add return. Okay, and this will be it for this method. Now in theory, if we go back, let's save the script. If we go back to removing state, we know that this selected data contains this object, but it is better to check. So again, if our GameObject index is -1, we can return early. Now if it isn't, we need to start removing this object. So what we need to do is call selected data, and we are going to call remove object at, and we are going to pass the grid position. We're doing this next because we need this index to call on our object placer. Let's for now right click on this remove object at method, quick action, generate this method. Let's right click, go to the definition of it, and what we are going to do is we are going to call here for each. I'm going to press tab twice to generate it from a snippet. Var position, pos in placed objects. We're going to get the grid position, and we are going to get the occupied positions. We're going to add placed objects, and we are going to call remove, and we are going to pass the position itself. So basically what we are doing is removing all the keys representing the object from our dictionary. Great. So this is removing our data so that we have stored in our grid data. Let's go back to our removing state, and we are going to now be able to remove this object from our map. So what we can do is we are going to call object placer dot remove object at, and we are going to pass the game object index. Let's right click on this method, a quick action, and generate this method, and we are going to right click and go to the definition. So here we can check if our placed game object.count is less or equal to our game object index. This means that the index is not on our list. We are going to return, and if everything else is okay, we are going to simply call our placed objects index, and we are going to actually have to remove this. So we're going to get the game object index, and we are going to get the game object reference, so we can call destroy, and we are going to set the placed game objects with this index to be null. So probably that's another condition that we should check. So or we are going to check if this is true. So if the game object with this index is equal to null, we are going to again return. Okay, great. So we have this code. Let's save this. Let's go back to removing state. And what we can do now is update our preview. So we're going to get the vector 3 cell position, and we are going to set it to be grid dot world or cell to world. So that we need to get the position, we are going to pass the grid position, and we are going to set the preview system update, and we are going to pass this cell position, and we're going to pass the false. Okay, so last method that we need is the update state method. And actually I've made a mistake, because what we can have here at the top is that we have removed a furniture object, but we still have a floor tile. So instead of passing false here, we need to actually check is we need to create a new method called check if selection is valid, and we're going to pass the grid position. And we are going to right click on this method, quick action, and generate this. So what we can do here is slide up, and we have this check can place object at furniture. So we're going to check. We are going to return here in the check selection return, and we are going to pass the furniture data can place object at. So if this is true, and we are going to copy the same check for the floor data, and we are going to add and if the floor data check is true. So remember that those are checking if the position is free. So we're going to just add parentheses around those, and we're going to add the exclamation mark. So we're going to basically return the negation of those values. So only in case those two return true, this will be true. So the position is empty, so our check needs to return false. In any other event, it will return true, so the selection is still valid for our removing state. Okay, I hope that it made sense for you. Now we can reuse the same thing in our update state. So let's remove this throw statement, and we're going to say bool validity equals our check if selection is valid, passing a grid position here, and we are going to call our preview system update position, passing the position. So we need to call our grid the cell to world, passing the grid position, and we are going to pass the validity. Okay, so I think we are done with this removing state script. Let's save this, and we need to now go to our placement system, since here we have the main logic that will allow us to trigger our removing state. So what we need to do is slide it down to find the start placement. And here, what we did was created a new placement system. So what we need to do is create below a public void method called start removing. And what we can do is call stop placement, since we want to stop any previously selected state. So if we are placing anything, we want to stop. Next, we are going to call our grid visualization set active, and we are going to pass true. And last thing that we need is to instantiate our building state equals, and this is great about the state pattern. We can call our new removing state, and we are going to pass here the values. So our grid, we need to pass the preview, and we need to pass the floor data, the furniture data, and lastly the object laser. And this is it. What we also need to do is, of course, connect our input to the onClicked and onExit. So let's copy those from our start placement, and we're going to paste them here in the start removing. Now, basically, everything should work. So let's save this, or use file and save all, Ctrl-Shift-S. Let's go back to Unity. Great. Let's select in the hierarchy our UI. Let's go to the panel and let's select the removing panel and the UI button. Let's find the button component, and all we need to do here is select our onClick, add using this plus icon a listener to it. Let's drag from our building system from the hierarchy the placement system, and we are going to select the function placement system, and we had this start removing. And I think that one more thing that I have missed is in the previous system. If we open it up again in the start showing preview for the removing state, we had this here, start showing removing preview. What we had forgotten to do, or I had forgot to do, is call our cell indicator set active to be true, since we have always disabled it. Okay, so let's save this, let's go back to Unity and let's press play. Okay, let me place some objects on our map, and we are going to select the X button, and now we can see that the cursor is showing red when we are selecting the cell where there is no object, but it should work when we are selecting an object that is already on our map, and we should be able to select any cell for our object to be able to remove it. Now, let's try placing something back, and as you can see, we can place our object everywhere because we have removed the data correctly. So we can again remove this, place something else here, and everything should be working fine. Now we are still missing some sound effects, so this is pretty dull. So let's go back and add the sound effects to our project before we finish this video. So in our project, let's right-click, create a new C# script. We are going to call it sound feedback. And let's open it up. Great. I will paste the code here and just explain it to you if you want to take a look at it, to check out the GitHub repository. We are going to have some audio clips, click sound, place sound, remove sound, wrong placement sound. We're going to have a reference to an audio source, which is private, but the serialized field. We're going to have an enum, public enum sound type, click, place, remove, wrong placement. And we are going to have this play sound method that takes the enum and uses a switch statement. And here we are going to simply check what is the enum, and we are going to play one shot using the audio source, the specific sound. You can quickly create a switch statement by typing switch, tab twice. We are going to type sound type, and we are going to use arrow down, and it creates automatically each case for each enum type. Save the script, let's go back to Unity. And actually, we want to go to our placement system. At the top of this, we are going to add another serialized field, and we are going to add private sound feedback, sound feedback. Now we can use this and pass it to our placement state. Since we are going to add this here, and we are going to go to the definition of the constructor, right-click, go to the definition. We're going to add at the top of this placement state and sound feedback, and we are going to add it to our constructor. So sound feedback, and this sound feedback equals our sound feedback. Great, so we are going to slide down to our on action, and if we have checked if the validity is false, we have used sound. We can use sound feedback, play sound, and we're going to select sound type dot wrong placement. Okay, And if this is not the case, we can call our sound feedback.play sound, and we're going to select sound type, and we are going to have the plays sound. We can do the same to our removing state, but I'm going to leave it for you to add it. We're going to save it, and let's go back to Unity. Make sure that you save your script, and now we're going to go to our building system, right click here, and create empty sound feedback. I'm going to drag here our sound feedback script. We have the clips in the content folder in the sounds. The select short is for the click sound. We can add it in the placement system. We're going to select placement construction to the play sound, the remove to the remove sound, and wrong placement will be the wrong placement, of course. And we are going to add here the audio source. And let's drag it to the reference to the audio source. Let's uncheck play on awake. We can reduce the volume to something like 0.6, and this should be good. Let's select our placement system, and let's drag our sound feedback to the reference field. Let's save this, and let's press play. Great! I have added some more sound, so now we can click, and we hear the sound, and we can place objects, and we hear the sound. We can select the wrong placement spot, and we can do the same with the remove state, and we can remove the objects. Okay, and everything should be working now fine, so we can select any space, and it is showing in white if we can remove object from this space. Again, take a look at the GitHub repository for the end code with the sounds and with the old fixes, so that we can see, we can hide the grid when we start our game. Okay, thanks a lot for watching. See you in the next tutorial.